1.4 billion people live across this vast continent called Asia. And we are telling their stories on this edition, From Salvation to Eviction. After several decades of finding refuge in Pakistan, Afghans who escaped war are being sent home. And journey to uncertainty. Poverty and instability await Afghans coming back to their homeland. We check on some of the refugees. I'm Daniel Khan, and this is Assignment Asia. Welcome to the program. For many decades, Pakistan was a refuge for millions of Afghans who fled conflict and poverty in their country. But in 2016, Pakistan's government began cracking down on refugees and sending them back to Afghanistan in droves, citing security concerns and its intensified campaign against terrorism. The refugees found themselves uprooted from their homes and livelihood after Pakistan announced it wants all of them out by the end of 2017. I visited a refugee camp in Peshawar and followed an Afghan family as they reluctantly left for the border. It's been almost 4 decades, but Haji Gul still remembers the day he fled his country and ended up in this camp. Fleeing the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in the late 1970s, he crossed Afghanistan's border with Pakistan. The border became an open road to salvation for millions of Afghans. Camps like this, located 30 kilometers southwest of Peshawar, became their new home. By 1985, Pakistan had more than 300 refugee camps, most of them in the northwestern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province and Balochistan. Since 2002, more than 5 million refugees have gone back to Afghanistan, but nearly the same number remains spread throughout the world. This is the Khazana Afghan refugee camp on the Charsada road in the outskirts of Peshawar. At least 3,000 families of Afghan refugees reside here, out of which only 100 have returned to Afghanistan. Haji Gul raised his family in the mud-baked lanes of this refugee camp. His grandchildren were all born here. Afghans whose only idea of Afghanistan comes from the stories he tells them. But soon they would have to leave. The Pakistani government wants refugees out, seeing the camps as a threat to national security. There are also growing concerns over the number of unregistered refugees, which are said to be almost 2 million.
Security का मसला तभी पैदा होता है कि एक मुल्क में अगर लाखों लोग बगैर शनाख्त के हो तो फिर तो इनसिक्योर मुल्क है. ओपनली मैं कहता हूँ इस वक्त मेरा मुल्क इनसिक्योर है. खाली खैबर पख्तूनख्वा नहीं, सारा पाकिस्तान इनसिक्योर है कि लाखों लोग हमारे मुल्क में बगैर शनाख्त के रह रहे हैं.
Younger generation of Afghans who grew up in Pakistan's refugee camps, like Haji Gul's grandson, are not optimistic about going back to their motherland.
When they are talking about Afghanistan, that we will be good to Afghanistan, I'm feeling sort of frustration because there is my friends, there are my teachers, I burn there. How I can forget this country? And this is your country, and I would like to still my life there.
Pakistan's government wants all refugees out by the end of 2017.
چې خپل ورور مړي ژوندي ته ونه رسېږي بس دې نه خو تګ پکار ده دې واپسې کې خو دا مشکلات دغه وو که نه چې د خپلې خوښې تګ هم نه سو که نه لکه زبردستي غوندې تګ سو.
The first hope of return for Afghan refugees emerged in 1988 with the Soviet withdrawal from their country. But the conflict went on, this time between Soviet-backed rebels and Afghanistan's Mujahideen. Conflict that gave birth to the Taliban and plunged Afghanistan further in misery. When the US launched the war in Afghanistan after the 9/11 attacks, more Afghans fled their country in droves. The uncertainty back home has made refugees like Haji Gul feel fortunate to be in Pakistan and hesitant to leave.
زما عمر به را 55 شپږ 50 کوي او چې راغلی وای نو څو عمر مو چې راغلی زما 18 کاله و یا 19 کاله داسې عمر کې و زه دغه پته بالات موږ څو وای چې به څنګه ژوند خو ملک خو هر چا د خپل ملک ده ما ته خو قسم ده لکه په جیل کې چې پروت ما سره خبره ده کنه ما د هغه ملک دی د خپل ملک او دا بچان مې دي بچان مو وایي د موږ دا ملک ده هغوی دلته پیدا شوي دلته لوی شوي دلته وخت تېر کړی هغوی ته دا ملک ښکارېږي موږ ته هغه ښکارېږي خو هغوی به هم خدای ثواب وکړي سړی هلته به.
Pressured by the international community to deliver more in the war against terror, Pakistan's government began targeting refugee camps. Two of the largest camps, Kachagadi and Jalozai, were shut down. After granting several extensions, the government decided to pull the plug on Khazana as well. Many others are next in line. Some officials believe refugee camps harbored terrorists.
मेरा ख्याल है कि अब दुनिया में ये हमें एहसास हो चला है कि हमने 35-40 साल से इतने लार्ज स्केल रेफ्यूजीज़ को हाउस किया हुआ है तो अब ज़रूरत इस बात की है और वो हमारा सिक्योरिटी इशू बन चुका है क्योंकि जब से हमने उनका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डिस्ट्रॉय किया है वज़ीरिस्तान में और बाकी फाटा में तो रेफ्यूजी कैंप उनके एक तरह के सेफ हेवन्स बन रहे हैं जहाँ पे लोग चूँकि अनरेगुलेटेड मूवमेंट है.
Refugees were initially given extensions to stay. But in September 2016, the government gave a final deadline to the 1.5 million remaining refugees. Afghanistan's ambassador to Pakistan says his government wants the refugees to come home.
We do expect that their return will contribute to better security, to better working environment, to better to job opportunities, and because refugees is not a burden. Of course, only 30% of the refugees in Pakistan live in camps. 70% of the refugees, they pay rent, they have businesses, they own property. So there are a big number of refugees who go back with resources, and those resources certainly are helpful.
But many refugees, like Fazal Durrani, whose father was a commander of the Mujahideen that fought the Soviets, are skeptical.
ज़मीन नहीं है, घर नहीं है, उधर जब उधर घर उधर डालेगा तो इस बच्ची को हम क्या करेगा? उधर पढ़ाई स्कूल किधर है? जब नया नया जाएगा तो महीने तो हम वाकिफ भी नहीं होगा.
प्रेसिडेंट अशरफ गनी साहब हैं, उन्होंने बोला है कि आप लोग फूल है ना मुहाजिरीन, तो आप फूल हैं तो उधर आएंगे तो अफगानिस्तान से खुशबू आएगा और हम आपका बहुत मदद करेगा. तो जो उधर से लोग जा रहे हैं उनसे फ़ोन पे रब्ता होता है, उनको उधर कौन सी खुशबू मिल रहा है.
जब बूथ धूप आ जाएगा ना, बूथ धूप तो ऊपर बच्ची भी आवाज़ देगा, बीबी माँ भी आवाज़ देगा, तो हम क्या करेगा? मजबूरी उधर से खुशबू आ जाता है क्योंकि वो रोएगा तो वो सब वतन को पता चलेगा कि ये मजबूरी है, इधर गरीब आ गया, इधर इसको कौन पूछेगा.
Before the repatriation process starts, refugees are required to tear down their houses at the camps. As their homes went down, they stood by, their eyes showing hopeless defiance.
When the Afghan refugees arrived here 37 years ago, the people of Pakistan welcomed them with open arms and even offered them their lands to build their homes. And now that they are leaving, Pakistan has generously offered them to even take back the bricks to rebuild their lives back in their homeland.
The camps sit on land that belongs to the local population, some of whom are happy to see the refugees leave.
ठीक है वो लोग जाए ना वो उधर काम करेगा उसका वही वतन है ना हमारे ही हम इधर काम करेगा वो इधर आए हमारे मेहमान थे अभी तक ये घरें भी बहुत महंगी थी अभी सस्ती हो जाएगी गरीब इधर भी है ना उसके किराए भी बहुत ज़्यादा है वो उधर जाए इधर किराए भी थोड़े सस्ते करेंगे घरों का रेट भी सस्ता करेगा.
Forced out of their sanctuary, refugees stand all day in seemingly endless lines, preparing for a journey they do not want to make.
This is the VRC, or the Voluntary Repatriation Center, Jamkhani, the last stop of the repatriation of Afghan refugees in Peshawar. The UNHCR says that at least 1,000 to 1,200 families are facilitated in this center every single day before they make their journey towards Torkham at the Pak-Afghan border.
Refugees are handed telephone numbers to make appointments with the UNHCR before they're given a departure date. At repatriation centers in the outskirts of Peshawar city, thousands of refugees wait for their turn. Sitting under the scorching heat along with trucks loaded with their belongings.
Okay. And the next stage is screening, where we check those who are eligible for repatriation, those who have cards or not. Pakistan government has issued proof of registration documents for all Afghans since many years now. So here we check whether they are holding or they are in possession of such cards and whether they are valid or not. People have to go through 5, 6, most people, 5 stages. But the maximum stages is 9.
It takes about 3 to 4 hours for a family to get to the final stage, where they get a voluntary repatriation form. The UN gives the refugees $400 each to help them resettle.
If you look at the average of 5 to 6 family members, we are talking about $2,200, $2,400 US, which for the beginning is a relatively good amount of money for starting life back home.
At the repatriation center, 68-year-old Azatullah awaits his turn to go. After narrowly escaping the Soviet invasion, he thought he had found a home with his Pakistani brothers. At his age, he lacks the strength to start all over again, but he says it's time to go back home.
पाकिस्तान ज़मीन सर हर किस्म ने की करे दुनिया वालों ते दमंग हर किस्म तकाली पुरानी करी आओ आवाज़ दाना इस्लामी ममलकतों हम इमदाद करे.
Some experts believe sending refugees back to Afghanistan would worsen social and economic problems there.
In Pakistan, these refugees have a sort of a support system that they have developed over the years. In their extended phase, the refugees have been staying in Pakistan for the past now 37 years now. So they have established their life here, and obviously there are going to be a number of challenges in moving back to a country which has been war-torn, which has a number of security-related issues.
The time has come for Haji Gul and his family to leave.
I'm on board Haji Gul's truck, in which he's carrying his lifelong belongings back to his homeland, to Afghanistan, along with his children and grandchildren. And at the moment, we are crossing the Khyber Pass, which is one of the oldest routes that links South Asia with Central Asia.
At peak times, at least 400 to 500 trucks cross the border every single day, each carrying 4 families on average. The road snakes through Khyber, a mountain pass connecting Afghanistan and Pakistan. Haji Gul looks nervously at the road as his destination nears.
نو بس دا خورست حالات پته لګي موږ ته بس پته لګي او د وطن آبادیدل خو هر وخت به کار ده ټول عمر په کار ده چې اوسای خپل ملک لاس وي خپل ملک آباد کی خپل مر پر مختاګ وکي دا خو ډیر ښه خبره ده خورست معلومات به حالات چې دنیا څه پروګرام ده.
At the border gate, Haji Gul bid the country that has been his home for almost 4 decades farewell. He will make another 200-kilometer trip to Kabul and may never return to Pakistan ever again. As poverty and misery continue to besiege his homeland, Haji Gul knows it's a journey to the unknown.
According to the International Organization for Migration, a record number of more than 600,000 refugees returned to Afghanistan from Pakistan in 2016. Humanitarian agencies are concerned about Afghanistan's lack of capacity and resources to help its returning citizens reintegrate to Afghan society. Next, on Assignment Asia, we look into the conditions of Afghans who have returned home.
Culture Express. See the world in color.
Since Pakistan closed down refugee camps in 2016, hundreds of thousands of Afghans have crossed the border back into their homeland. For many of them, it was not a joyful homecoming, but a plunge into uncertainty. Catherine James met some of the returnees struggling to rebuild their lives in Afghanistan in the midst of poverty and conflict.
One by one, they return. Hundreds per day, thousands per month. These people are crossing the border from Pakistan to Afghanistan, some in trucks laden with household goods and extended family, some bringing only what they can carry. Among the throng comes Zaitun with her 3 sons, orphans under Afghanistan's definition of the term, because their father is dead. He was killed 4 years ago by a suicide bomber while at his vegetable stand in a market in Peshawar, Pakistan. Zaitun's eldest son, Riaz, now 12, was expected to help earn money for the family. He sold flowers on the street, but she says it wasn't enough and they were struggling. Still, Pakistan was home. Zaitun and her sons were born there and had never lived in Afghanistan. But just like the 600,000 others who left Pakistan for Afghanistan in 2016, life had simply become untenable. So Zaitun sold their furniture to pay for the small truck to bring them to Afghanistan. Humanitarian groups say the number of returnees in 2017 are on track to reach the same levels of 2016, if not more. Here at the Torkham border, the number of returnees coming from Pakistan has reached such an amount that the humanitarian agencies have built a new road and a transit centre with proper infrastructure to deal with the number of people coming through every day. The IOM, the United Nations agency dealing with undocumented returnees like Zaitun, has set up the first checkpoint some 50 metres from the Torkham border crossing. Zaitun registers her family's arrival at the reception centre with a series of paperwork and medical checks. Meanwhile, her son's first lessons in their new reality begin while they wait for her. It's all about the risks of landmines and unexploded bombs. From there they drive about 5 kilometres down the road to the IOM Transit Centre. Here, more paperwork awaits, but there's also some food, a small cash grant for transport, the lessons on landmines again, and at least a month's worth of basic food supplies. The supplies won't last long, but they have nothing, so they take it all.
We say returnees because Afghanistan is their native country, but for many people they're returning to a country that they barely know. A lot of people left 20, 30 years ago during the Soviet-Afghan War. Their children, their grandchildren were born in Pakistan. And in some cases I've met families whose children don't speak Pashto, the language in this region. They're speaking Urdu. So it's a very steep challenge to reintegrate and come back to communities where they may or may not have family connections. Certainly in most cases they don't have land, they don't have jobs lined up ready for them.
For Gulzaman's family, who moved to Afghanistan in early 2017, the IOM supplies and the support are long gone. None of Gulzaman's 12 children or their families have ever lived in Afghanistan. Luckily, they have some relatives with a home in a district called Besud, near Jalalabad city. However, space is tight. Gulzaman says he decided to bring his family to Afghanistan after he was fired from his brickmaking job for being an Afghan refugee, and they were no longer able to move around freely. He worries about his children's interrupted education and the utter uncertainty of their future. The district Besud is not a thriving place. It can sustain the families who built it, but there's not much for an influx of returnees. Nevertheless, Gulzaman is defiant about his decision to return. This tone is not unusual. Nezamuddin, a beekeeper in Pakistan for 35 years, speaks with a similar conviction that returning was the best for his family, despite the fears for the future. He has settled his family of 9 children and their children far on the outskirts of Jalalabad in Sorkhud district. It looks desolate. It has no roads, almost no infrastructure, and almost no resources available. However, the space has allowed Nezamuddin to snap up some land, and a community of returnees appears to be growing. Nezamuddin and his family were lucky enough in some respects to be considered documented refugees, which meant that they received a cash grant when they arrived from the UNHCR, which has allowed them to build some kind of settlement, these walls that we see here. However, that is only a one-off payment, and the future of their lives here in Afghanistan depends largely on resources, jobs, and of course schooling, which for Nezamuddin and his children, the main concern here is what is the future for his children. Nezamuddin says despite the lack of access to education and to resources here, he is just relieved to now have left Pakistan.
بده وضع کوله ښه سلوک یې نه کوو هر وخت کې خلک به یې نیول او تاڼو ته کول به یې مطلب د تنګولي و بیا یې تاڼه کې د پیسې واغستلې وو بیا به یې 2-3 ورځو له راپرېښود بیا بله ورځ بیا بهرحال بیا به یې نیول دا واړه ماشومان دا به یې نیول په گاړو کې اچل به هلته به یې وړل تاڼه کې بیا به ایسته مونږ بس خلک تنګ شو نو په دې مجبورۍ په خاطر باندې ایسته مونږ لوره کې که خپل وطن هم دی که ښه یي او که بد یي ځئ چې ځو. It's not good. Afghanistan is facing its toughest year of conflict in 16 years. The number of civilian casualties is expected to break another record this year, with more city centres experiencing massive attacks, underlining just how deadly and widespread the violence is getting. The security forces are struggling to maintain both territory and morale. It's a situation that has immigration researchers like Lisa Schuster in disbelief that Afghanistan is being forced to repatriate such a high number of people at this time.
When we're talking about survival for most of these people, we're actually talking about most of these people not knowing where tomorrow night's dinner is going to come from. So it's extremely precarious. In terms of large numbers, let me give you a little context. 2015, close to 1 million people arrived in Europe, a continent with 500 million people, some of the richest countries in the world. Afghanistan has a population of 30 million. It's one of the poorest countries in the world, and it's received the same number. In fact, it's received the same number in terms of returnees from Pakistan and Iran at the same time as it has close to 2 million people internally displaced.
Afghanistan depends heavily on foreign aid to sustain its economy, and the increasing number of returnees is putting a heavy strain on resources.
تقاضای ما از جامعه جهانی همی بوده که حمایت کنن بخش مهاجرین و بخش عودت کننده ها را. خب تنها بحث مهاجرین نیست، بحث های حکومت افغانستان نیاز داره برای کمک های جامعه جهانی در عرصه های مختلف. ببینید تقریبا 1 میلیون عودت کننده را ما سال 2016 داشتیم. هرگاه برای هر کدام از اینها، برای هر فرد از این، ما اگر $100 نیاز داشته باشیم 100 میلیون دلار میشه که طبیعی است که حکومت افغانستان از بودجه ملی برش سخت خواهد بود تا بپردازه.
The humanitarian agencies working at the coalface of migration from Pakistan have been amazed at the number of people returning. The UN has warned that when combined with the more than 1.5 million people who are already internally displaced, Afghanistan risks a humanitarian crisis.
And when you look at the fact that 2016 was also a record year for internal displacement, you have really substantial challenge in integrating all of these people who have been moved mostly to the urban centers and are putting a pretty considerable strain on the resources that are already limited.
There's a number of different things that can happen. One is people will come and they simply won't be able to settle or survive, so they will leave again. There's also the risk that there will be increased conflict as more and more people are competing for fewer and fewer resources. I'm not a security expert, but I don't think it takes an expert to realize that the insurgents, including the Taliban, will be more than ready to profit from this, because if you have young men with no other source of income, whether they like it or not, the insurgency becomes not an attractive but an inevitable source of income. I think that's a real problem. More worrying is you will have a generation of children who will be growing up without an adequate education. We will see a return to the really high levels of maternal mortality and infant mortality that existed in Afghanistan not too long ago. So the strain on this fragile country is enormous.
For people like Zaitun, these big picture possibilities are not her concern. She focuses on what she can do for her sons within her means. At least one positive amid her tears: they are going to stay with relatives instead of a refugee camp. And another positive: they still have a sense of humour. For Assignment Asia, I'm Catherine James in Afghanistan.
The UN Refugee Agency has called on Afghanistan's government and the international community to step up efforts to ensure decent living conditions for returning Afghans. The agency hopes pledges to help Afghanistan, including $15 billion in aid from the European Union, would soon be turned into concrete programs to help the returnees and the rest of the country. You can learn more about this and all the stories on today's program on our website, www.assignment-asia.com. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. I'm Daniel Khan. Thanks for watching and join us again on Assignment Asia.